Welcome to the Times of Israel's What Matters Now. I'm your host, Deputy Editor Amanda Borschel-Dan, here with our film reviewer, Jordan Hoffman, for a pilot episode of our new podcast, which we have not yet quite named. So, Jordan, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hello. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here on the unnamed episode 0 of the soon-to-be-figured-out podcast that we're still making up as we go along.
It's so true. We are, but here's the premise, and let's just spell it out for our listeners, our viewers right away. And essentially, you are an expert on all things film and most things Hollywood and Jewish. And I know basically nothing because I never have a chance to watch anything. And so the concept is that we're both going to watch the same thing every week and talk about it, each from our own expert or extremely inexpert perspectives.
Right. You nailed it. That's terrific. I mean, basically, I've been doing this job. I've been writing about film and television and entertainment professionally since 2007. So that's we're getting close to 20 years. I've been writing for Times of Israel since I believe 2014. I believe that was my first.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. My first freelance assignment, and have been interviewing celebrities and writing about films, always from a how does this affect, how does this, is it good for the Jews, basically has been the perspective. And that could be about a serious documentary about, Israeli politics or, a historical film, but also a movie like Superman, which is, of course, as you can read in the piece I wrote about Superman this summer, the authors of the original Superman wrote it as an allegory for their Jewish upbringing. And, so always kind of looking at it from that lens. But also, if a movie's got Natalie Portman in it and it's got nothing to do with Jews, but she's Jewish, so we like to know what she's up to. That's kind of how we've been doing it for Times of Israel. And that's what I think we're going to do here, a mix of big Hollywood stuff, a mix of very serious political stuff from all, right-wing stuff, left-wing stuff, no-wing stuff. And also one thing that I'm excited about, because this is how we get Amanda into it more, is a lot of classics. Now, like she said, I've been writing about film for since 2007, and Amanda's been very busy since 2007, living a fruitful life out there in Israel and running the Times of Israel, basically single-handed, keeping the lights on over there. Has several popular podcasts, is a very busy woman, has a lot of children, has to fight scorpions outside the door because she lives out there in the desert. Mm-hmm. Is it true? I never can tell if you're pulling my leg when in the morning before anybody leaves the house, she has to go out there with a broom and attack the scorpions. I'd just like to leave that as my vision of you each morning. But hasn't really watched any movies in a very, very, very long time. Is a bit of a tabula rasa, as we say.
Yes. And so let me just jump in here and say that part of my reasoning in starting up this podcast, one, because I'll get to speak with you every week and you're just a gem. And of course, we will always find the jangle on whatever Hollywood or non-Hollywood movie we're talking about. But also that now I'm going to have a weekly date in which I'll watch with my husband. And so our listeners, viewers will be hearing a lot about my husband's reactions too, which are always really unique, shall we say. So let's go to a short break, and then we're going to start with our first segment, which is all about Jewy news. Okay, so let's go to a break.
I always say, if there's one thing we need to do really well, it's delight the customer. Our goal is for everything we do to quietly fade into the background so the customer simply thinks, wow, that was really easy. What's made this journey so meaningful is the ongoing challenge of delivering personal connection and thoughtful, tailored service in a virtual world. And especially now, that connection feels more important than ever. We're one nation, one family. When we heard about Hayalim getting engaged and planning quick weddings, we knew we wanted to help, so we gifted them beautiful ketubas, a small but heartfelt thank you for their courage, their protection, and all they're doing for Am Yisrael. We hear it all the time. People are saying, "This is the best company I've ever worked with." And honestly, that comes down to one thing: the care each team member puts into every single order.
And we're back. I am Amanda Borschel-Dan here with Jordan Hoffman, film reviewer extraordinaire. So what we're going to start out with is finding a little bit of Jangle, Jewish angle, for some Hollywood news. So you've brought 2 items this week, I believe, Jordan. So what's the first thing you'd like to discuss?
Well, I mean, the first one is a little serious, which is, as I'm sure readers of TOI know, there has been a little bit of a backlash against Israel lately in the world, and there was a petition that went around where a great many number of people in the film industry signed and said, we will not participate in anything that touches in some way the Israeli state, because they choose not to, which, it's fine. And a lot of our favorite actors are in there. I mean, Emma Stone, who's won a bunch of Oscars, Mark Ruffalo, who plays the Hulk in the Marvel movies, and he's also a very good actor in movies that are not stupid like the Marvel movies, and a lot of other big directors who are important in Hollywood. And they say that they're not touching anything. And part of it is like, well, all right, how is that really going to manifest itself? Well, it looks like the first thing that concrete and somewhat important actually did pop up. So a boycott situation that actually is important, I think, for Israeli film that people should know about. There is a documentary festival run out of the Netherlands called the IDFA, which stands for something Dutch, International blah 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 Festival of blah blah blah, and it's one of the big ones. It's a big documentary film festival, and they said that they will not allow any projects that have received any Israeli funding. But they said, but if the director is Israeli, that's cool. We're not talking about individuals. We're just talking about movies that have received Israeli funding. But in actuality, that means any Israeli film, 99% of the time, because the way it works in Israel and in many other countries, not in the USA, there's no government funding of the arts here in the USA. That's what we're all about. But in the rest of the world, most things have a little bit of government. There's a film fund or something. I mean, even, the New Zealand Film Fund, the Luxembourg Film Fund, there's always some involvement for other, and Israel is a case of that. So it basically means that they were disallowed from any projects. And not only that, but the festival also works as a film market. Now, for some people who are listening that go to film festivals, local ones, if you're in America, the Hamptons Film Festival is something you hear about. It's like, let's go for the weekend, see some movies that haven't come out yet. It's more of just like a chance to see movies. It's not really, you're not. But some of these bigger ones, like the IDFA, is a place where it's also a marketplace. There's the public side, which is people can watch a new film and applaud and see the people involved. But there's also in a convention center attached, there are all these booths where deals are made, both in a concrete way. I'll meet you at 3:00 here and we'll talk about your slate and we'll figure about, and then also like, hey, we're all going out for lunch and we're going to make connections. And that's how the business works. And I've seen that. And that's what happens at these bigger ones. Well, so the Israelis are out at this one. So this is kind of a big deal because this festival is sort of a doorway to setting up deals elsewhere throughout Europe and perhaps even in North America. And so, the side that said we're going to initiate boycotts, they a lot of times people talk a big game, but here it is. The festival director did say in an interview that they're sticking to their guns. They feel that anything that the Israeli state has touched is tainted with, they say they're colluding in genocide, which is arguable. And But they said that
more
they
than
take
arguable.
it on
I'll just jump in there and say more than arguable.
Many are arguing daily about that. But she did say, oh, we'll take it on a year by year basis. So part of me thinks that that's a get out of jail free. Like, oh, by next year, maybe things will have mellowed out and we don't have to take so hardcore of a stand. Maybe this is going to blow back for us. So anyhow, that's what's going to be happening next year. So
Jordan, let me just ask you, cut in here. And so you're talking about the documentary film market, and obviously Israel has a lot of them. I know so many people who have made documentary films here in Israel, and maybe it's just a Jewish pet hobby in general. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But so these people are going to be affected in terms of their salaries, meaning it's quite possible they will not be able to make the deals that they would have made, or at least it's a step towards that. But at the same time, there are other festivals, such as the Other Israel Festival in New York.
Oh, yeah.
And so are people who know that the Israelis will be boycotted elsewhere, are they looking to that festival a little more, with more scrutiny than they may have done in previous years?
There's a couple things I want to say. We're getting into some good stuff here. The Other Israel Festival in New York City is a fascinating festival. That's not really a marketplace. That's just a place for Jews on the Upper West Side to go and then argue and then have kugel after. It's a great festival set out of the JCC on the Upper West Side. And what they do, and this is a really good point, what the Other Israel Festival is all about is showing films, documentaries and narrative films about Israeli ethnic minorities. So it's about the Arab population in Israel. It's about the Druze population. It's about Christians in Bethlehem. It's about all these stories that are not part of the majority, and they've been at it for I would say at least a decade, maybe even more. And they show some really great movies. The point I wanted to make, and the thing which is kind of an interesting contour to what's happening in the Netherlands, is a great many of these films that are going to be essentially boycotted are very left-wing films. This is not a lot of right-wing Zionist propaganda. It's a lot of very, very left-wing stuff. For example, the winner of the Ophir award this year in Israel is a very left-wing movie. One of the most revered Israeli directors outside of Israel on the festival circuit. He's been to Cannes. Another is a fellow by the name of Nadav Lapid, I believe is his name. And his movies are indistinguishable from the anti-Zionist films that are en vogue elsewhere on the international scene. But his movies would be nixed also. And this has caused a bit of consternation. And in fact, there has been a little bit of blowback from some people who were, able to have a little nuance in the conversation, say, hey, wait a minute, some of the best movies about the suffering that's happening in Gaza are coming from Israeli filmmakers. I mean, the movie that won the Oscar last year for documentary, which we talked about a lot, No Other Land, was a co-directing project of 4 individuals, 2 of whom were Israeli and 2 of whom were Palestinian. That did not have Israeli money in it, but these boycotts are leading to such a hard line where it's just like, no, anyone who's even and no Israelis at all, boom, we are so in lockstep with our boycott that we simply won't allow it. And that would mean No Other Land wouldn't be able to be seen, which I think most people on the extreme left felt that film was very positive for getting their message out. So we're living in interesting times.
I'll just mention one thing. You said the Ophir winner, which is, the Israeli Oscar, the winner of the Israeli Oscar, the Ophir is Israel's candidate to go to the Oscars, the real Oscars, so we say. Yeah. And it is the film that won is as you said, a very left-leaning perspective on the conflict between the Israelis and the Palestinians, and told through the perspective of a Palestinian child. So one would think that this film in particular should not be boycotted. But you never know, right, Jordan?
In this case, if it has Israeli money, it would need, to those who signed the petition, And some of them signed it probably without even reading it, just because it was a thing to do. And some of them signed it because they believed it. Mark Ruffalo certainly believed it. He is not new to pro-Palestinian causes. He's been very involved for a very long time. Those who signed it would then have to not champion this movie. So it's an interesting thing. We'll see where we are with this festival next year. We'll see where other festivals go. I can say, having had conversations with people in the festival world, in the programming side, that there have been, unofficial rumblings of, Cannes used to program a lot of Israeli movies and now they don't. Are they softly boycotting us? Well, who can say? These decisions are made behind closed doors. I don't know. At least this festival, IDFA in the Netherlands, is being upfront about it. So in a way, hats off.
I'll just throw out a shout out to a really funny comedian called Ryan Long, who has an amazing short sketch on the Hollywood actor trying to agonize whether he should be pro or anti-Israel at this point. So check that out on the Instagram. Jordan, we are going to go to a short break and then we'll come back.
On October 7, I was here at the Nova Music Festival. I ran for my life, hid for 7 hours. Terrorists shot me twice. Thankfully, I survived. I'm still dealing with trauma, and I'm not alone. 3 million Israelis are in trauma. They need mental health care or physical rehabilitation. Wounded soldiers, families, and scared children.
Since 1912, Hadassah has been a life-changing force in Israel. Today, Hadassah has 2 world-renowned hospitals, pioneers breakthrough medical research, cares for youth, and has built the much-needed and largest rehabilitation facility in Jerusalem.
Thank you to everyone at Hadassah Hospitals. You've been helping me, and so many others. And a special thanks to one nurse, my mom. I love you.
And we're back. I'm Amanda Borschel-Dan here with Jordan Hoffman. So Jordan gave me a homework assignment this week, and that was to watch the film Nuremberg, which is coming out this weekend, at least in Israel, I suppose internationally as well. Has it already come out in the States? Okay,
I believe it comes out this weekend. It's funny because, our news item was about a very serious topic. Our discussion film today is Nuremberg. I promised the listeners we're going to get to Mel Brooks soon. I mean, that's going to be part of the fun also. But
because I've seen nothing. So yes, we're definitely going to get to it. And
Tabula rasa with Amanda Borschel-Dan.
It's true. It's true. We need to come up with the Hebrew term for that. And that can be the name of our podcast, right? In any case, I watched Nuremberg over 2 nights with my husband. It's about 2.5 hours long. Yeah. It's quite a slow-paced film, somber in tone, obviously, as one would expect. Yeah, I'm going to give you my very quick little takes, and then we'll actually hear an expert talk about it. So I know the history quite well of the Holocaust, and it was really fascinating to see this perspective. And the only 2 things I knew coming into watching this film was, number 1, it's about the Nuremberg Trials, and number 2, Russell Crowe is in it. And I have to say, I didn't immediately recognize Russell Crowe, whom I recently saw when I watched a couple months ago Gladiator for the first time. Have you heard of that film, Jordan?
Yeah, Gladiator's a lot of fun. I love Gladiator.
Yeah, it made some kind of splash. And my husband and I also watched another film recommended by friends with Russell Crowe that was quite recent, where he was a cop and lost his memory, and it's quite, entertaining and unfolds. But in any case, this Nuremberg role for Russell Crowe is what I suppose is meant to be his Oscar bid. I don't know if he already won an Oscar or not, because he gets all ugly and he has an accent, and that seems to be the 2 things that make you win an Oscar.
That's right.
The film itself was
he plays Hermann Goering. You should.
We should mention he plays Hermann Goering.
He plays Hermann Goering, and he comes when it's in the very first shot. His car is stopped, and he steps out, and the camera shoots him from low. And Russell Crowe has put on some pounds over the years, and I think he added some weight for this film. They put some padding on him, and he looks like a mountain. He looks 350 pounds. And then like one of the American GIs is like, oh my word, it's Hermann Goring. I don't believe it. Just in case you didn't see the poster ahead of time. That's the level of subtlety in the film. So yeah.
Yeah, that's true. And I have to say, I was overall disappointed by the film because it is such an important topic and it's an anniversary year. But I have to say that we're meant to, I suppose, sympathize with the main character, who is this psychiatrist who's, torn and struggling with how he can fall under the sway of the very charismatic Goering. But I forgot the name of the actor who plays him. I just found him repulsive, I would say, throughout most of the movie.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's not a great film at all. I will say, so overall, if you had to do the sort of classic thumbs up, thumbs down, you're kind of thumbs down on this?
I would say I'm thumbs. Okay. The only saving grace of this film is that it's a delivery system for the actual footage of what happened at the camps that I think most people have not seen or they don't remember seeing. And so if you think of it as a 2.5-hour delivery system for about a 1.5-minute scene, then thumbs up. But if you think of it as entertainment value, capturing our interest, my husband and I fell asleep the first night. We had to break it up in 2 nights. I would say thumbs down. How about you, Jordan?
Well, I can't defend it too vigorously, but I will say you're someone who watches a movie very, very infrequently. I am someone who has to watch a lot of movies, and compared to a lot of the dreck out there, it's actually not that bad. It's not a masterpiece. It's nothing I'm racing out to see. I wouldn't tell anyone in the audience to go and buy a ticket unless you are like a real history buff or you love Russell Crowe or some of the other actors in here. Rami Malek is the main guy, and I like him a lot. But you can wait till it's on one of the streaming services, and then it's not that bad. It does do exactly what you say, which is it does show genuine footage of the camps, the horrible footage, which of course was also sort of the more shocking element to an earlier film, which maybe you've never seen or even heard of, called Judgment at Nuremberg from 1961. Is that ringing a bell? Okay,
no.
Well, that's what this show is all about. Amanda not knowing about the movie called Judgment at Nuremberg. Judgment at Nuremberg came out in 1961. It is a fictionalized version of the Nuremberg trial. This movie, of course, is a narrative, but all the characters are real people. So it's Goering, Rudolf Hess, Justice Jackson. In the movie Judgment at Nuremberg, it was all make-believe characters. So Burt Lancaster played a Hermann Goering-esque character. Spencer Tracy played a Justice Jackson-esque character. Very famously, Judy Garland, America's sweetheart, who had kind of not been in a movie for a while, played a Holocaust survivor in a very shocking scene. And in that movie, it's amazing. Judgment at Nuremberg is by today's standards similarly a little dull. It's really long. If you thought this movie was long, Judgment at Nuremberg is really long. But what it did in 1961 was it showed actual concentration camp footage as well in 1961, which shocked the hell out of people. And it was a very, very important movie. That was back in the day before we had 10,000 streaming services and cable television and the internet, when there was more of the so-called monoculture. Everybody saw Judgment at Nuremberg. It was a big deal. It did win some Oscars. It was nominated for everything, and it won, I think, Best Screenplay. And Maximilian Schell won the Best Supporting Actor. Oh, also in Judgment at Nuremberg, a young William Shatner as like a clerk to the justice, and he's actually very good in it. Like a young, scrappy, like, hey, it's Captain Kirk, and he's acting. Look at that. So
and he's Jewish.
And he's Jewish. He's one of our great Canadian Jews. So anyhow, this movie, I believe, the director and the producers wanted to make it as a corrective to Judgment at Nuremberg, because Judgment at Nuremberg is very straight and narrow in 1961 and literally in black and white. This movie is about, and I think there's a coda at the end which really nails it, the shades of gray, the contours, how our main character, who is the psychiatrist, who is a real fellow by the name of Douglas Kelly, who was sent by the U.S. government to assess the defendants to sort of see if they were sane enough to stand trial, which was a big deal for Rudolf Hess because he was feigning
Amnesia.
Amnesia. Wasn't that fun? What's it called when you can't remember something? I can't remember.
Nice.
Amnesia. So he was feigning amnesia, and also to make sure that nobody would kill themselves, which of course is ironic given, no spoilers, but what happened to Goering. So
can you spoil history, actually?
Yeah.
I mean, really?
You can if you don't know. So we're watching the movie through his eyes, and it's about how Rami Malek's character, despises the Nazis, but he does find Goering a little bit, I don't know, sympathetic or at least charismatic, which is a very important thing to think about. I mean, how did the Nazis come to power? And then it's about their relationship, and he meets Goring's wife, and there are other. I
think was the best, most luminous character in the whole film.
Was Goring's wife?
Actress. Yeah.
Yeah. I would imagine that is the most fictional part of this thing. Probably. Those scenes where he goes and the little daughter Goring is playing Bach or whatever on the piano. So it's interesting stuff. And then at the end of the film, which is true, this guy who went and spent time as a shrink with the Nuremberg defendants, he was not the only one. He has sort of a conflict with another psychiatrist who's there. He sees what happens. According to this film, is pretty influential in Justice Jackson's case against him, and then kind of loses his mind when he gets back to the U.S. because he's so close to darkness that he writes this book where he says, any of us in the right, which of course now is sort of standard, how this is why the banality of evil, exactly. Yeah. It's now a standard thing, but he was sort of ahead of the curve. And there's this very interesting coda where he's on a radio show. Again, not the most subtle movie. He's like swigging whiskey while he's on like WMCA and all these very straight-laced radio news people in the year 1948 or whenever it is are trying to say, the Nazis were pure evil, weren't they? And he's like, no, any one of us could turn. It's all about your environment. It's very dangerous. We have to protect ourselves. And the world is not ready for that level of psychological insight. And then this fella, it's very sad, he then committed suicide soon thereafter, this guy, Douglas Kelly. So it's a pretty interesting twist at the end. But the movie itself, like you say, as a delivery system for history, yes. I mean, there's a lot I never... my knowledge about the Nuremberg Trials is I've seen Judgment at Nuremberg, and I know, and you normally see it when you watch a 12-hour documentary on World War II. It's one of the last chapters of then there was Nuremberg. I didn't ever realize to what extent there almost was never a Nuremberg trial, how it was a big deal to get everybody in the Allies to agree to it, how there were many in the US and elsewhere that felt that it shouldn't happen, that it would give the Nazis, a grandstand from which to make their case. There was a lot of fighting about it. Justice Robert Jackson, who was sort of the main prosecutor, he was initially going to be tapped to be the Supreme Court justice, and because he was involved in Nuremberg, they feel. The movie suggests that's why he was never picked as the Supreme Court, what do you call it? The main justice, the Chief Justice, excuse me. Yeah. He was never picked to be the Chief Justice. There's this British fella who's played by Richard E. Grant, the kind of the drunk who puts his little whiskey in his tea.
Brandy, I think it was actually, and he was fantastic.
Did that actor, or did he ring a bell to you? Had you been like, I've seen that guy before? Okay, yeah. He's one of these great character actors that's been in a million things. Richard E. Grant, he's a wonderful fella. He's a big Barbra Streisand fan. That's one of his claims to fame. So he's he kind of comes in and saves the day at the end, which I think is actually true to history, which was an interesting contour. There's also the part where one of the translators, there's an American GI who speaks fluent German, who's a translator, and he is played by Leo Woodall. He's a real person from history. His name is Sergeant Howie Trieste. And you later discover that he is Jewish, and he's been keeping that secret the whole time, but he's been having to translate for Goering and all the other Nazis and kind of not be their pal, but be like, oh, he's sick. He needs aspirin. I have to tell that, he's the go-between. That's his job. is to hang out with these Nazis. And I'll give a little bit of a spoiler away. He tells our main character, Rami Malek's character, Douglas Kelly, that, you know, when they're sent to the gallows right before they hang, he's going to look them in the eye and say, you know, I'm a Jew, and you've been friends with a Jew this whole time. Because particularly, I forget which one of the other evil Nazis, I forget which one. And then the big ending comes, and one of the big evil Nazis is terrified to go to the gallows. He's pissing himself. He's crying, and he has this big moment. Does he do what he pledges he will do and get revenge for his family? His parents were killed at Auschwitz. His sister was missing for years. Or does he treat him like a human being? Which, again, I guess is all what this movie is about. The not black and white, you know, can Goering, even though, you know, he's evil, can he be a little bit charismatic? And you know, will Rami Malek's character fall for it? Or will he eventually snap back and say, no, oh my God, this guy, he did not know nothing. He knew everything, and he must be condemned. So that's what the movie's about. It's not that bad. A glowing endorsement, isn't it? It's not that bad. I mean, it's shot well. There is also a slew of supporting characters. Colin Hanks shows up. John Slattery from Mad Men, he shows up. He plays like a all business girl. You've heard of the show Mad Men, right?
That's the advertising one?
It's about the advertising, yeah. So one of the guys on Mad Men, one of the beloved characters on Mad Men who does a lot of comic relief, he was the guy, the kind of the sergeant in charge of it all. Like, you're in my prison now, that guy, you know. Okay. Is like, then don't screw around, you know, that guy, all business, kind of funny. That's the guy from Mad Men. People who have seen Mad Men will be like, oh, it's my buddy, he's back. Also, the woman Ren Schmidt, who is an actress who's on the show For All Mankind, plays you know, an associate of Justice Jackson's. She gets like 2 scenes.
She was great too.
Yeah, she was great, but she gets 2 scenes and she's kind of downplayed, but it's pretty good. So yeah, it's an interesting movie for history buffs, and it's certainly good for, you know, if, let's say, you have some, I don't know, if you're a middle school teacher out there and you want to teach your kids about the Holocaust, there are some scenes about, because it is set in Nuremberg, because that's where the trials were, also where the Nuremberg laws come from. There's an interesting scene where Justice Jackson, he's trying to get our main character, Rami Malek, who has inside, trying to feed him information. And he's like, I'm a doctor. That's patient confidentiality. And Justice Jackson's like, look, pal, these guys are Nazis. We gotta, I need all the intel I can get. And he describes to him about the Nuremberg laws and about anti-Semitism in the Nazi regime. And it's a pretty good scene, I thought. That
I'm just smiling, Jordan, because that is the scene in which both my husband and I fell asleep the first night we tried watching it. So I'm just smiling on that.
Well,
but what I found really interesting was watching it through my contemporary perspective, of course. Sure. And you're watching this movie, and the Nazis very obviously and factually committed genocide. And as an Israeli, I'm watching it and I'm thinking, how could the world be accusing Israel of committing genocide when it's so clearly night and day what happened during the war in Gaza versus what happened in the systematic, you know, planning and execution of the murders of 6 million Jews in Europe. So, I mean, it's complicated watching it. Yeah.
If you're curious about how people could think that, I get on a plane, fly to New York, and have a conversation with anyone under 30, and they'll give you their opinions very quickly, and you know, they'll make the case they can. It is an interesting thing how you define genocide. It's a definition that has movable boundaries these days, and yeah, I mean, there are people who argue that Prime Minister Netanyahu should be in the situation where Goering is in this film, and if they have their way, they might get that. And you know, there are a lot of people who believe that. I think it's interesting that this movie is coming out right now. Movies take a long time to make. I don't think that you know, the Israel-Gaza war was on the mind of the makers when this project was getting off the ground, but I am sure that it will be received with that. And it could be taken, people who are pro-Israel would see this as a document that they can point to explain the origin of the nation and why Israel exists in the first place. And others can look at it and say, this is what we have to do to people like Netanyahu, and never the twain shall meet. I should say that the movie is written and directed but it's based on a book about Douglas Kelly, who did write his own book. That's the Rami Malek character. And it's written and directed by a fellow by the name of James Vanderbilt. And if you're wondering if he's a Vanderbilt, he is. How about that? Somewhere. He's one of the cousins to Cornelius, the Commodore. And his biggest win in his career is he wrote the screenplay to the movie called Zodiac. Have you ever heard of Zodiac? It's about the Zodiac killer. No. Zodiac is one of the best crime detective movies ever made. It's with Jake Gyllenhaal, a nice Jewish boy, and it's directed by a fellow named David Fincher. And Zodiac is a masterpiece. But this guy Vanderbilt has made a lot of other movies too. He wrote some of the, they all get involved at some point or another in these superhero movies. So he did some Spider-Mans over the years, and he's done a lot of movies. He's written some stuff and produced some stuff with Michael Bay. He did a movie called Ambulance, which is a lot of fun. And he just does a lot of other. He was involved in a Adam Sandler movie, and someone whose work we're absolutely going to touch. Have you seen any Adam Sandler movies?
I definitely have, because I had brothers growing up. So, obviously that happened.
So he's an interesting guy, this fellow Vanderbilt. I mean, he's interesting just because he's a Vanderbilt, but he has made some very good movies like Zodiac, which I mentioned. He's made some dopey Hollywood movies like Adam Sandler stuff, and some of the Scream movies, some of the Scream sequels he's written, co-wrote the screenplay. But then he's doing this. He's doing Nuremberg, and obviously he cares very deeply about the project because he didn't just write and produce it; he directed it as well. You earlier, or you more than once called me an expert. The only thing that makes somebody an expert on movies is you've watched a lot of movies. It doesn't take, to be an expert is to know about fields that like archaeology and things like that, where you need study and to actually. To be a movie expert means you just sit around on your couch a lot or go out to the movies. Having watched a lot of movies, particularly about this topic, I would say I would give this a very mild thumbs up, but like my thumb is like this. That's how up it is. It's like wounded with arthritis. That's how up it is. It's a little bit of a thumbs up.
It's the Alta thumb.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. It's not, it has some touching moments. It has some, I think the ending is quite good, but it also has some I had to throw that in there. It's a little bit phony at times, the way they have to bark out the exposition. So,
I just felt like as an editor, it just needed to be tightened a lot. But
it is. It's not short. It's 2.5 hours. Yeah, you get your money's worth, I guess. Yeah. So, for a first film that we're talking about, it certainly is important to the TOI audience. I feel like they should know when major stars like Russell Crowe are playing Hermann Goring. That's sort of something you would not have guessed when he came out in Gladiator 25 years ago. You said you didn't like Rami Malek, the main character. You just didn't like the performance, or you didn't like the character? You thought he was a little icky, or?
I felt the character and the performance was repulsive. I had no empathy for him at all. I thought he was a narcissist and repulsive. And maybe that was the point of him. It's quite possible. I don't know.
I think it's a little bit the point, because he goes in there because he's like, I'm going to write a book about this. And he did. He's like, I got this gig. When he first gets there, he doesn't know why he's even there. He's just been summoned. And he's like, you're going to hang out with these guys and make sure they don't kill themselves. Who? Hermann Goring and the gang. And he's like, what? And he sees dollar signs. Like, whoa, this is my ticket to fame, which in a way it was his ticket to his own personal demons, man. But I like Rami Malek a lot. To let you said you found him a little creepy. I mean, he's played a James Bond villain before. So he's good as a James Bond villain. He was
Freddie Mercury. I saw that, and I thought that was fantastic. I definitely had empathy for him in that role. Yeah. Okay, Jordan, we need to wrap up. And I think one thing that we definitely need to mention to our listeners is that we're still looking for the name, which we said at the top. And so I think we should talk about some of the contenders and invite them to weigh in, and in no order. One name that we're talking about is, your name, Jordan. Do you remember the one that you suggested?
Well, I was thinking Hollywood Schmooze or Hollywood Kibitz, and then you jumped in and said Hoffman's Hollywood Schmooze.
Right.
I am a humble man.
Good one.
I am a humble man. I don't know if I want my name on the podcast. Hoffman's Hollywood Schmooze. Also, what if I'm sick one week and somebody has to fill in? But I like Hollywood Schmooze, the TOI Hollywood Schmooze, the Hollywood Kibitz, but maybe Kibitz is a little too esoteric. But we are at Times of Israel. I don't know. Yeah. You had a title that was certainly funny, but also a little daring. What was your name for the show?
Okay. So I was thinking Jews rule Hollywood, or do Jews run Hollywood? And, leave it as a question there. But maybe that's a little in your face, possibly.
Yeah. It is true. People claim, hey, the Jews run Hollywood. And it is undeniable that the Jews created Hollywood. You look at all the major studios, Warner Brothers, Columbia, Universal, they were all founded by Jews, which is something that we should be proud of and not try to downplay. But now when they say the Jews run Hollywood, it's also like the Jews run banking, the Jews run the space laser that controls the weather. It's maybe something that we don't want to get into on a friendly podcast about movies and television. So yeah, if the listeners have another idea for the podcast other than cancel this show, they should reach out and let us know. But then also importantly, we do intend to cover new stuff that's important, serious films like Nuremberg, fluffier films that then touch upon the Jewish experience in some way, but also classics. Amanda has not seen Mel Brooks's History of the World Part 1, and that is essential viewing. So we're going to be hitting that. But I think we should ask the listeners, what are some other biggies that we should hit in the first round? Like, has Amanda seen Barbra Streisand in Funny Girl?
No, she has not.
Okay, all right, that's another biggie. Has other kind of touchstone movies, but also maybe ones that are like, I was thinking of movies that I think are very good, that are important to me, that are not big like Funny Girl, that are a little bit. Like movies by the Coen brothers that are a little more interesting.
I have actually seen quite a few Coen brothers movies, good. Because they were shown at the local bar next to my university during happy hour. So I'll just leave our...
But if you're drinking and talking during the movie, then you're not really paying attention, are you?
Who said anything about talking?
A bunch of Jews at the bar not talking? What? And then we should maybe do a Woody Allen movie. I know Woody Allen is controversial. We could even do some Roman Polanski movies also. He's even more controversial. Oy vey. We want to hear from the audience what we should do next, is what it is.
Exactly. So please send an email to podcast@timesofisrael.com, and we'll read every single one and discuss them and maybe even take up your ideas. So if you have ideas about things we should talk about and names for the soon-to-be released separate podcast series, please let us know right away. And in the meantime, I'm going to say goodbye, Jordan.
I'm going to say goodbye, but also one suggestion I have is, if somebody can fix the 7-hour time difference between Israel, where Amanda is, and the New York City area where I am, the 7-hour time difference is killing us. It's very early where I am right now.
Well, I am in the luxury of afternoon time, and so I'm quite happy to have this hour as our
awesome.
recording. All right, Jordan, thanks so much, and it's such a pleasure always to see you.
Okay, good speaking with you.
Thanks for listening to the Times of Israel's What Matters Now and soon to be question mark podcast series. If you have any comments or questions or suggestions, please reach out and write to podcast@timesofisrael.com. This episode was produced by the Podwaves. Until next week, shalom.